Question 1. From a practical standpoint, what is the most critical consequence when a technician incorrectly maps application layer issues to the network layer protocols in a TFP troubleshooting scenario? A. Packet encapsulation will fail at the physical layer, rendering the NIC inoperative. B. User authentication failures may be misattributed to hardware failure. C. The routing table may automatically reset to default, causing black hole routes. D. TCP window size negotiation will bypass DNS resolution altogether. Answer. Correct answer. B. User authentication failures may be misattributed to hardware failure. Blue book explanation. The application layer in the TC-PIP model maps to layers 5, 7 in the OC model handles user interfaces and software services, while the network layer, OC layer 3, is responsible for logical addressing and routing. Misattributing an application layer issue like failed logins or email delivery to the network layer prompt incorrect actions, such as replacing cables or routers, when the problem is actually in software configurations, DNS services. This misdiagnosis violates Cisco's layered troubleshooting approach, which prioritizes application-level verification before progressing to lower layers. Reference. Cisco RSTECH topic. OC and TCP/IP protocol models. The Cisco Press Foundation Learning Guide. Question 2. The relationship between data link speed negotiation and AutoMDX becomes critical in configuring mixed speed interfaces. What could be the impact if a gigabit Ethernet port is connected to a fast Ethernet port without proper configuration? A. The ports will automatically throttle to 10 Mbps due to duplex mismatch. B. Both ports will enter disabled state if AutoMDX is enabled. C. Only the gigabit Ethernet port will function, ignoring fast Ethernet's limitations. D. The link may fail to come up due to speed and duplex mismatch if auto negotiation is disabled. Answer. Correct answer. D. The link may fail to come up due to speed and duplex mismatch if auto negotiation is disabled. Blue book explanation. Gigabit Ethernet 1000 base D and fast Ethernet 100 base TX ports can interoperate only if proper speed and duplex settings are negotiated without auto negotiation. Common issue is duplex mismatch, where one end is full duplex and the other is half duplex leap. Collisions, frame drops, and erratic performance. Cisco recommends enabling AutoMDX and auto negotiation for seamless link establishment across mixed speed links. Manually setting mismatched speeds without negotiation violates E800 2.3 standards. Cisco RSTECH Ethernet standards layer 2 behavior. Question 3. During the process of subnetting a Class C IP address block for a small branch office, a technician allocates 192.168.1.0.0.28 to support 10 devices. Which of the following reflects a valid reasoning for rejecting this design? A. The broadcast address consumes one usable host IP. B. A 28 subnet cannot support more than 8 hosts. C. The 192.168.1.0.0.28 range includes only private addresses and is unsuitable. D. Subnets smaller than 24 are incompatible with routing protocols. Answer. Correct answer. B. A 28 subnet cannot support more than 8 hosts. Blue book explanation. 28 subnet yields 24 equals 16 addresses, but only 14 are usable, excluding network and broadcast. This supports 14 devices, so the reasoning in B is invalid only if the subnet was smaller, e.g. 29, 6 hosts, or 30, 2 hosts. Hence, option B reflects false concern, meaning it's correct reason to reject misconception. Cisco emphasizes accurate subnet planning aligned with VSM, variable length subnet masking, and CIDR, classless interdomain routing principles. Cisco RSTECH topic, IP addressing and subnetting A1878. Question 4. Illustrated by a technician trying to reload a catalyst switch, they are unable to enter privileged exec mode after logging in. Which command would allow Elevation to view the full device configuration? A. Enable. B. Login local. C. Terminal length 0. D. Config register Xerox. Answer. Correct answer. A. Enable. Blue book explanation. Cisco iOS uses hierarchical modes. After user exec mode, denoted because, the technician must enter privileged exec mode, denoted by # using the enable command. This is essential to execute high-level commands like show, running, config, or reload. The other options are either configuration commands. Login local is for authentication setup, terminal display commands, terminal length effects, paging, or boot behavior settings, config register. Not understanding iOS operating hierarchy leads to permission and access issues. Cisco RSTECH, Cisco iOS operation and modes. Question 5. In light of recent developments in secure network management, which utilities should a technician avoid when accessing remote Cisco equipment in a production environment, and why A, Telnet because it transmits data in plain text, B, SSH because it requires a third-party plugin, C, FTP because it can't be used for software upgrades, D, Ping because it does not support it. Answer. Correct answer, A, Telnet because it transmits data in plain text. Blue book explanation. Telnet transmits usernames and passwords in unencrypted plain text, making it a major security risk. Cisco best practices dictate using SSH, secure shell, for remote access, especially over untrusted networks. SSH is strong encryption and key-based authentication. FTP is usable but also insecure unless replaced with SAP. Ping does support it via IPv. The use of Telnet violates security standards such as NIST SB 80053 ESA 12 and Cisco Secure Network Lifecycle Principles. Cisco RSTECH Remote Access Tools. Question 6. When analyzing Cisco equipment in a multi-vendor rack setup, what is the most reliable method for a technician to confirm a device is a Cisco Nexus switch and not another vendor's equipment? A. Check for USB console port on the front. B. Identify the model number starting with LEN and confirm via CLI. C. Observe the LED pattern during post. D. Connect to the device and look for the MAC address prefix starting with 011. Answer. Correct answer, B. Identify the model number starting with N and confirm via CLI. Blue book explanation. Cisco Nexus switches, typically used in data centers, are usually labeled with model numbers like NK, etc. Additionally, accessing the CLI via console or SSH allows verification using the show version or show inventory commands. MAC prefix checking is unreliable due to vendor reuse. LED behavior varies by model, and USB ports are not exclusive to Cisco. Documentation mandates model and serial verification through CLI for asset inventory and RMA processing. Cisco RSTECH Cisco Equipment Identification. Question 7. Given the circumstances of a remote site router replacement where console access is not available, what tool or method should a field technician prioritize to complete the installation securely and efficiently? A. Use a preloaded USB with startup config and iOS image. B. Reset the router to factory defaults and configure from scratch. C. Apply a loopback plug to enable automatic routing. D. Use Telnet from a nearby switch to access the router. Answer. Correct answer, A. Use a preloaded USB with startup config and iOS image. Blue book explanation. Cisco supports booting from USB if console is unavailable. The technician can insert USB containing the appropriate iOS image and startup config text for zero-touch provisioning. This is particularly useful in remote or inaccessible environments. Telnet is not an option if IP configuration isn't yet established. Loop HUDs are diagnostic tools and not used to enable routing. Factory resets should be avoided unless necessary. Cisco RSTECH Tools for hardware installation and replacement. Is Cisco Smart Install Guidelines? Question 8. To what extent does selecting the wrong LAN cabling type affect the technician's ability to achieve maximum throughput on gigabit Ethernet backbone? A. Only shielded, twisted pair STP can support gigabit speeds. B. Cat cabling is insufficient due to limited bandwidth and signal degradation. C. Optical fiber is mandatory for all gigabit implementations. D. Coaxial cable can substitute Cat for short distances. Answer. Correct answer, B. Cat cabling is insufficient due to limited bandwidth and signal degradation. Blue book explanation. Cat supports up to 100 Mbps, whereas K or Cat is required for gigabit Ethernet 1000 base D. Using older cable leads to signal crossed or limited bandwidth. According to ANSYS 568 standards, Cat is not certified for gigabit. Coaxial is not used for modern Ethernet networks, and fiber is preferred but not mandatory. Correct cable selection is foundational to maintaining link integrity and speed. Cisco RSTECH line cabling E800 2.3 standard. Question 9. When evaluating the merits of password recovery on a Cisco router, why is it necessary to modify the configuration register value? A. To prevent the IOS from booting. B. To bypass the existing startup configuration during reboot. C. To load an old iOS image from ROM. D. To re-enable HTTP access to the router. Answer. Correct answer. B. To bypass the existing startup configuration during reboot. Blue book explanation. To perform password recovery, Cisco instructs modifying the configuration register e.g. to Xerox, so the device ignores the startup configuration at next boot. This allows the technician to enter global config mode without password restrictions, reset credentials, and then restore the config. Loading an older iOS or an HTTP is unrelated to this process. Cisco RSTECH configuration register and password recovery process is Cisco official support docs. Question 10. The most significant aspect of resolving intermittent connectivity issues on a switch port is identifying duplex mismatches. What typically causes a duplex mismatch and what is the symptom? A. Both ends use the same auto-negotiation settings, resulting in full duplex errors. B. One end is hard-coded to full duplex, the other to auto-negotiation, causing collisions. C. The switch disables the port automatically due to spanning tree recalculation. D. Broadcast storms due to VLAN mismatch on both ends. Answer. Correct answer. B. One end is hard-coded to full duplex, the other to auto-negotiation, causing collisions. Blue book explanation. Duplex mismatch occurs when one end is manually set e.g. full duplex and the other is set to auto-negotiate, causing the latter to default to half duplex, believing no negotiation occurred. This results in collision errors and performance degradation. Cisco's troubleshooting methodology recommends verifying C-duplex consistency and reviewing show interfaces for errors. Broadcast storms and VLAN issues are unrelated. Cisco RSTECH troubleshooting layer 2 issues. The E800 2.3 Cisco Field Manual. Question 11. To better understand WAN provisioning, a technician is dispatched to troubleshoot a serial link connecting a Cisco router to a telecom provider. Upon inspection, the router shows the message. The serial is down, line protocol is down. What is the most likely issue if the C-SUDSU is properly connected but the carrier circuit is inactive? A. The router interface is administratively down. B. The WAN encapsulation is incorrectly set PPP. C. The problem lies with the telco circuit beyond the demarcation point. D. The DT-DCE cables are reversed at the router. Answer. Correct answer. C. The problem lies with the telco circuit beyond the demarcation point. Blue book explanation. If both the physical interface and line protocol are down, but local hardware like C-SUDSU and cabling are verified, the problem typically exists beyond the customer premises at the telco side of the demarcation point. This could include T-provisioning errors or central office issues. Cisco documentation emphasizes using loop testing on C-SUDSU and consulting telco support. Interface shutdowns or incorrect encapsulation typically yield different status messages. Cisco RSTECH. Function of C-SUDSU and WAN troubleshooting. ITT G.703 standard. Question 12. With the advent of remote diagnostics, why might the technician use an RJ45 loopback plug-on a Cisco switch console port during hardware verification? A. It allows the switch to test its internal routing table. B. It initiates the self-test of the switch's fans and power supply. C. It enables physical loopback tests to verify port transmission and reception. D. It causes the switch to reset and erase all configurations. Answer. Correct answer. C. It enables a physical loopback test to verify port transmission and reception. Blue Book explanation. Loopback plugs are used to verify physical ports by creating feedback loop from TX transmit to RX receive pins. When inserted into console or serial port, it helps confirm the interface's physical ability to send receive data. They do not trigger configuration erasure or test software processes like routing. Part of Cisco's hardware-level diagnostics, especially useful when no terminal or host is available. Cisco RSTECH, Loopback Plug Identification and Use, a Cisco Hardware Diagnostics Toolkit. Question 13. Considering the evidence from a field deployment, a technician is unable to install a Cisco transceiver module into a catalyst switch due to resistance. What is the most probable cause? A. The slot is disabled due to a failed licensing registration. B. The transceiver is of the wrong form factor like SFP plus versus QFP. C. The device is running in install mode and doesn't support transceivers. D. The firmware does not support optical transceivers. Answer. Correct answer. B. The transceiver is of the wrong form factor like SFP plus versus QFP. Blue Book explanation. Cisco transceivers come in different form factors like SFE, FP plus FP, etc., each with unique dimensions and connector types. Attempting to insert the wrong type, a QFP, into a SFP slot will cause mechanical resistance. Licensing does not restrict physical installation, and the install bundle mode refers to software image format, not hardware. Cisco recommends checking hardware compatibility via show inventory and consulting datasheets. Cisco RSTECH, transceiver identification, a Cisco optics compatibility matrix. Question 14. During the process of designing a dual-stack network, a technician is asked to assign both IP and IP addresses to all devices. Which of the following reflects a critical advantage of using SLOC of EV in IP environments? A. SLOC enables DNS server assignment automatically. B. SLOC allows stateful address allocation with tighter control. C. SLOC requires EE infrastructure and is simpler for stateless environments. D. SLOC restricts address spoofing better. E. Answer. Correct answer. C. SLOC requires EE infrastructure and is simpler for stateless environments. Blue Book explanation. SLOC stateless address auto-configuration enables devices to self-assign IP addresses using router advertisements (ROS) with an EEV server. It's ideal for lightweight, stateless networks. However, it does not assign ENS by default unless supplemented by ES. Exception EE is better suited for state configuration and administrative control. SLOC promotes simplicity but at the cost of control. Cisco RSTECH, IP addressing Alpha 862 SLOC. Question 15. Among the various commands available in user exec mode, which command provides essential layer 1 and layer 2 status of a Cisco interface and helps determine duplex mismatches and ERC errors? A. Show IP interface brief. B. Show run interface. C. Show interface name. D. Show CDP neighbors. Answer. Correct answer. C. Show interface name. Blue Book explanation. The **show interface name ** command gives detailed statistics including input-output error, ERC counts, duplex settings, and speed. This is critical for troubleshooting physical and data link layer issues. Show IP interface brief offers summary level info but omits error counters. Show run interface reveals config not live status. Show CDP helps verify CDP-based device discovery, not port health. Cisco RSTECH iOS command usage. Cisco command reference guide. Question 16. One might argue that CAT is always superior to CATE for LAN deployments. However, what scenario might justify using CATE over CAT in a Cisco switching environment? A. When TAMP's throughput is required across all ports. B. When installation is temporary and cost sensitive, supporting only WAMPs. C. When outdoor cabling is necessary due to shielding in CATE. D. When ME mitigation is essential due to CATE's insulation. Answer. Correct answer. B. When installation is temporary and cost sensitive, supporting only WAMPs. Blue Book explanation. CATE supports up to WAMPs, which is sufficient for many access layer deployments. When budget or temporary setups are concerned, CATE offers cost-effective solution. CAT supports up to TAMPs short distances but is more expensive. Neither CATE nor CAT is ideal for outdoor use without additional protection. ME shielding is not significantly better in CATE, Cisco RSTECH, LAN cabling, and CISA 568C standards. Question 17. In the context of terminal emulation, which of the following settings is critical to ensure successful console connection to Cisco routers via teraterm or PuTTY? A. IP address of the device. B. SSH private key configuration. C. Baud rate of 9600 for serial communication. D. FTP credentials saved in Session Manager. Answer. Correct answer, C. Baud rate of 9600 for serial communication. Blue Book explanation. When connecting via console cable to Cisco device, serial parameters must be configured properly in teraterm or PuTTY. The standard baud rate is 9600 with 8 data bits, no parity, 1 stop bit, ASIN, and no flow control. IP addresses and SSH keys are used for network-based access, not Syria. FTP credentials are irrelevant. Failure to match the baud rate results in garbled output or no communication. Cisco RSTECH. Terminal emulation configuration. Cisco Console Access Guide. Question 18. What would happen if a technician performs a local loopback test on a Cisco router serial interface but forgets to disable keep-live messages? A. The router will erroneously declare the link is up. B. The loopback plug will redirect the packets back correctly. C. The keep-live will cause the router to report the interface is down. D. The test will verify all layers, including the application layer. Answer. Correct answer, C. The keep-live will cause the router to report the interface is down. Blue Book explanation. In local loopback test, if keep-lives are enabled, the interface expects response from the far end. Since the loopback plug returns signals, internally no valid keep-live is received and the interface may go protocol down. Cisco recommends disabling keep-lives, no keep-live during such tests. This aligns with standard layer 1 procedures. Cisco RSTECH 1 loopback testing. It's Cisco Serial Interface Troubleshooting Guide. Question 19. The effectiveness of using TFTP for configuration backups on Cisco switches depends on several factors. Which of the following best reflects the security-related limitation of using TFTP in a production environment? A. TFTP is not compatible with Cisco Catalyst switches. B. TFTP sessions require manual authentication each time. C. TFTP transmits data unencrypted and is vulnerable to interception. E. TFTP cannot store running configurations from a router. Answer. Correct answer, C. TFTP transmits data unencrypted and is vulnerable to interception. Blue Book explanation. TFTP Trivial File Transfer Protocol is widely used in Cisco environments for config backup and iOS upgrades, but it lacks encryption and authentication. This makes it insecure for sensitive environments, especially over untrusted networks. Cisco recommend SE/TFTP with authentication in production. Ignore both running and startup configs using copy-run TFTP. Cisco RSTECH TFTP use and limitations. The Cisco security best practices. Question 20. Through the lens of system architecture, what distinguishes Cisco IOSE from traditional IOS-ON's Catalyst switches? A. IOSE is closed source and lacks modularity. B. IOSE is a Linux-based modular OS that supports processes independently. C. IOSE requires proprietary hardware to function. D. IOSE only runs on Nexus series switches. Answer. Correct answer, B. IOSE is a Linux-based modular OS that supports processes independently. Blue Book explanation. Cisco IOSE runs on Linux kernel, separating the control plane from the data plane, enabling better process isolation, resilience, and programmability. Traditional iOS is monolithic, meaning one process crash can bring down the entire system. IOSE supports model-driven programmability, patching, and enhanced security. It is distinct from NNOS, which is used on Nexus devices. Cisco RSTECH, Cisco Operating Systems Comparison, is Cisco iOS Architecture White Paper. Question 21. In the context of Cisco iOS operation, what is the best indication that a technician has successfully transitioned from global configuration mode into interface configuration mode? A. The prompt changes from router pound to router. B. The prompt displays router config if pound. C. The technician is able to issue ping commands. D. The prompt changes to router config line pound. Answer. Correct answer. B. The prompt displays router config pound. Blue book explanation. Cisco IOS uses hierarchical mode structure. The global configuration mode prompt is router config pound while entering specific interface e.g. interface JIGON changes the prompt to router config pound. This mode allows interface-specific commands like IP address, duplex, and speed. Router is user exec mode, and router config line. Pound is for line configuration e.g. console VTI understanding prompt levels is essential for precise configuration. Cisco RSTECH, iOS navigation and command modes. Question 22. While examining a Cisco router running iOS, a technician plans to downgrade the firmware using USB flash drive. What prerequisite must be met to avoid boot failures after downgrade? A. The configuration register must be set to Xerox. B. The router must be in bundle mode instead of install mode. C. The file must be placed in the boot flash packages.conf directory. D. The new image must be manually defined in the boot variable. Answer. Correct answer. D. The new image must be manually defined in the boot variable. Blue book explanation. When downgrading iOS, especially from install mode, the new image must be set using boot system flash file name. Failing to set the correct boot variable causes boot failure on reload. The boot flash packages.conf is relevant for install mode packaging but not for manual image boot. The configuration register Xerox does not define the image. Bundle mode refers to non-modular image but doesn't influence image selection unless specified. Cisco RSTECH, IOECI upgrade downgrade guidelines. Question 23. During the process of restoring a configuration on a catalyst switch, a technician pastes the entire config into the terminal window, but some lines appear as %invalid input. What is the most likely cause? A. The switch is running in monitor-only mode. B. The commands were pasted in user exec mode instead of global config mode. C. The file contained end-of-line delimiters incompatible with iOS. D. The configuration was encrypted and needed decryption before use. Answer. Correct answer. B. The commands were pasted in user exec mode instead of global config mode. Blue book explanation. Pasting configuration commands into the wrong iOS mode, such as user exec, will result in errors like %invalid input detected at markup. Configuration commands must be applied in global configuration mode, router config pound, or an appropriate submode. Encrypted configs, if present, are ignored rather than syntax errors. Cisco recommends using terminal length 0 and configuring from enable mode to ensure commands execute correctly. Cisco RSTECH configuration restoration best practices. Question 24. Given the circumstances in a small business network, users report that devices connected wirelessly experience frequent disconnections, while wired clients have no issues. The technician suspects an app misconfiguration. What is the most likely cause? A. The router's MAC address table is full. B. The app is operating on an overlapping channel with nearby apps. C. The switch has disabled the port connected to the D. The AEP pool for wired clients is exhausted. Answer. Correct answer. B. The app is operating on an overlapping channel with nearby apps. Blue book explanation. Wireless disconnections with stable wired connectivity often indicate RF interference. Overlapping channels, especially in the 2.4 GHz band where channels 1, 6, and 11 are non-overlapping, cause signal contention and retransmissions. MAC table overflow affects switching behavior, not Wi-Fi. Disabled switch port would result in no app connectivity at all. Not intermittent drop AEP pool exhaustion would block both wired and wireless devices. Cisco RSTECH wireless app configuration, IE 800 2.11 standards. Question 25. Despite the fact that all Cisco devices include identification stickers, what method ensures that a technician correctly identifies a Cisco router remotely during a support call? A. Using show interfaces to check port numbers. B. Using show version to verify model and serial number. C. Pinning the default gateway from the router. D. Checking the startup config file for host name conventions. Answer. Correct answer. B. Using show version to verify model and serial number. Blue book explanation. The ** show version ** command reveals critical information such as model number, serial number, iOS version, and uptime, which are essential during remote support or RMA processes. Checking hostname conventions or interface ports provides no hardware identity. The default gateway and config files do not include verified device identity. Cisco TAC often requires serial numbers from show version for support cases. Cisco RSTECH, remote identification practices. Question 26. What would happen if a Cisco router's NVRAM chip becomes corrupted and the device is restarted? A. The iOS will fail to load and remain in ROM. B. The startup configuration will be lost and the router will load with a blank config. C. The router will boot in read-only mode, denying access to user exec. D. The router will revert to factory default iOS and settings. Answer. Correct answer. B. The startup configuration will be lost and the router will load with a blank config. Blue book explanation. NVRAM stores the startup configuration. If corrupted, the router boots the iOS from flash if available but has no configuration to load, resulting in an initial configuration dialog. The device does not revert to factory default, nor does it enter ROM unless the iOS image itself is missing or corrupted. Understanding memory roles is vital. RAM stores the running config, NVRAM the startup config, and flash the iOS, Cisco RSTECH hardware components and boot behavior. Question 27. The traditional approach to managing Cisco IOSC involved bundle mode, but modern best practices favor install mode. What is a key advantage of using install mode over bundle mode? A. It uses less memory during operation by loading a single bin file. B. It allows modular patching and faster software upgrades. C. It disables redundancy features, increasing performance. D. It allows Cisco routers to operate without configuration files. Answer. Correct answer. B. It allows modular patching and faster software upgrades. Blue book explanation. Install mode extracts the bin package into individual PG files stored in boot flash. Packages.com for enabling modular management, faster upgrades, and smooth software maintenance upgrades without rebooting. Bundle mode, while easier for small labs, is inefficient and not scalable for production. It requires full image reloads for updates. Cisco recommends install mode for modern switch and router deployments. Cisco RSTECH, bundle versus install mode, ASC architecture. Question 20. A critical examination of the password recovery process reveals the role of the configuration register. Why Xerox commonly used during recovery? A. It skips iOS loading and boots directly to ROM. B. It prevents the system from loading saved configurations. C. It forces the router into monitor mode for password reset. D. It unlocks encrypted passwords stored in NVRAM. Answer. Correct answer. B. It prevents the system from loading saved configurations. Blue book explanation. Setting the configuration register to Xerox tells the router to ignore NVRAM startup config during boot. This allows access to the system without being prompted for password. Once inside, the technician can copy the startup config into RAM, reset passwords, and restore the config after resetting the register to Xerox. It does not decrypt passwords or ROM. Cisco RSTECH configuration register and password recovery. Question 29. By comparing two transceiver modules labeled SFP10 gram Xenia and GLCT, what operational layer and medium difference can a technician infer? A. One supports layer 3 IP routing, while the other is only for layer 2. B. The SFP10 gram Xenia is for copper, while GLCT is optical. C. The SFP10 gram Xenia uses multimode fiber, while GLCT supports copper Ethernet. D. Both are used in WAN environments for serial communications. Answer. Correct answer. C. The SFP10 gram Xenia uses multimode fiber, while GLCT supports copper Ethernet. Explanation. SFP10 gram Xenia is a 10 gigabit optical transceiver for short range Xenia over multimode fiber LCE is a gigabit Ethernet transceiver for copper RJ45 cabling supporting up to 100 meters. These modules serve layer 1 physical layer functions. They are not protocol dependent and don't operate at layer 2, 3. This distinction is vital for compatibility and proper installation. Cisco RSTECH, transceiver module identification and use. Question 30. During the process of interface troubleshooting, a technician discovers that the switch port is stuck in disabled state. What is the most likely root cause if the interface was recently connected to a user laptop? A. A spanning tree root bridge conflict occurred. B. The port was shut down due to duplex mismatch. C. Port security violation due to unauthorized MAC address. D. The interface exceeded allowed bandwidth thresholds. Answer. Correct answer, C. Port security violation due to unauthorized MAC address. Explanation. Cisco port security can be configured to shut down a port when an unauthorized MAC address is detected, placing it into disabled state. This commonly happens when laptops or unknown devices are connected to access ports with sticky MAC configurations. Spanning tree or bandwidth thresholds don't trigger disable in this context. Duplex mismatch causes performance issues but not port shutdown. Cisco RSTECH, interface troubleshooting and port security.